Plotting an election year strategy, we look at how federal Liberals will project a government-in-waiting image and fend off Tory attacks. Also, what Canadian parties can learn from the Colorado experience when it comes to legalizing pot. I'm Affan Chowdhry. Welcome to Globe Now. Justin Trudeau and the federal Liberals are gathering in Edmonton. It's their annual summer caucus retreat and lots to talk and think about. A federal election in 2015. Also, what to do about those Tory attacks targeting Trudeau's policy when it comes to legalizing pot. Well, joining us now is Eric Grenier, author of 308.com, where he writes about politics and polls. Thanks for coming in, Eric.
Thank you.
What do you think is going to be the most pressing issue facing the federal Liberals as they gather in Edmonton?
Well, this is their last sort of chance to prove to Canadians they're the government in waiting. So I think that in this last sort of parliamentary sitting, one of the focus is going to have to be on how to add a little bit of substance to the party as the next election approaches.
Now let's talk about polls. You reported that a July average of national polls showed that the Liberals were leading the Tories 39% to 28%. I mean, how much attention should we be giving these kinds of polls so far from Election Day?
Well, you know, it's not exactly super important to look at the actual numbers. You know, that 11-point gap, you know, the next month it could go down to 4, it could go down to 6. It's the summer, so the numbers bounce around a little bit more. But what's, you know, important to think about is that the Liberals have been leading in the polls now for 16 months. And the Tories have been stuck at around 30% or lower. So, you know, the fact that Canadians are moving over to the Liberals in such strength, you know, that's something. The fact that the Tories are at around 30, that's the lowest they've been polling consistently since they came to power in 2006. So, you know, these are important trends that point to, you know, Canadians being willing to change government at this point.
How worried do you think the Liberals are about the Tory attacks on Justin Trudeau?
I don't think they're very worried about it. They haven't been able to hit home. Obviously, when you look at the polling numbers, nothing has really hurt Trudeau or the Liberals. You know, and one of the things is that the attacks haven't worked because a lot of Canadians already have an opinion of Trudeau. We see when Trudeau became leader, most of the time there's, you know, about 30% of the population doesn't have much of an opinion about a new leader. But at the time, you know, there was maybe 5 or 10. You know, there are still Canadians who have less of an opinion of Thomas Mulcair than they do of Trudeau. So their opinions are already set, and that makes them harder to move. And, you know, that's what the Tories are trying to do. But because a lot of Canadians already feel they've known Trudeau now for many years, you know, they're not going to be swayed that easily.
But there is this feeling that the Tories think that, you know, Trudeau's policy on pot is his Achilles heel. I mean, but what does polling tell us about where the public stands on legalizing pot?
Well, when a poll just gives the option of legalization or not, you know, you usually get about 2/3 of the population that says it's time to legalize marijuana. When you have the option of legalization, decriminalization, or keeping things as it is now, that's when you have more of a split, you know, 3 ways between the 3 options. But, you know, it's might be a good policy, might be a good strategy for the Tories in terms of energizing their base, and people who are dead set against marijuana are not going to vote for the Liberals. But there's, you know, the majority of the population seems open to it at this point, so it's not necessarily something that'll hurt the Liberals.
Now, the Liberal retreat is happening in Alberta, you know, but the Tories have to be feeling pretty secure about a province they've dominated. I mean, could that change?
Not that the fact that they dominated. They could drop, I mean, in the last election, they're closer to 70%. They could drop closer to 50%, which would be very bad for the Conservatives in the context of Alberta, but still, you know, still winning the vast majority of the seats. But the Liberals, you know, in the polls, they've been between 20 or 30%. Those are the kind of numbers they used to put up under Jean Chrétien when they could win, you know, 4 seats or that sort of thing. So the fact that the Liberals are doing that well, we saw in the by-elections, they were able to actually get votes in Alberta. So the idea of winning a handful of seats in Edmonton and Calgary is certainly not out of the question.
And presumably it could make all the difference in a close election outcome.
Yeah, exactly. If it is going to be a minority, which it could be when you have 3 strong national parties, you know, those extra 4 or 5 seats could be extremely important.
Okay. Thank you so much, Eric.
All right. Thank you.
Well, we want to hear from you. Looking ahead to the 2015 election, which party are you leaning to and why? Tweet us at Globe Now. So, the Tories are expected to continue hammering away at Justin Trudeau and his policy on pot. But here's the thing. Places like Washington State and Colorado have already made leaps and bounds when it comes to legalizing pot. Earlier this year, Colorado made history by becoming the first state where people can legally buy marijuana from licensed stores. So what can Canada's Liberal Party learn from the U.S. experience? Well, we spoke to Mason Tvert, Director of Communications for the Marijuana Policy Project. He's also known as the Draper of pot. Take a look.
Marijuana prohibition has been just as big of a failure as alcohol prohibition. It's caused far more problems than it's ever solved, and we could really be benefiting from adopting a more sensible marijuana policy. Our goal in Colorado from the beginning was really to focus on marijuana itself and to make sure people understand that we're talking about a substance that is objectively less harmful than alcohol for the consumer and for society. It's less addictive, it's less damaging to the body, it's less likely to contribute to violent and reckless behavior. And this is something that a lot of people still don't know. And once they do know it, they come to agree that we should be treating it as if it's less harmful than alcohol. If you were to visit Colorado, you wouldn't really think anything is different now than it was 5 years ago, with the exception that there are stores where adults can purchase marijuana legally. We shouldn't just be teaching young people that marijuana is bad and they should never use it and not say the same thing about alcohol. We should be talking about all of these substances and all of their potential harms so that when young people inevitably do get faced with the decisions of whether to use them, they can make the most informed decisions possible. You know, the folks who want to maintain current marijuana prohibition laws like to act as if they're the only ones in this debate who care about kids. Well, it's just that at this point, most Americans think that making marijuana legal and regulating it would be a better way to protect young people, as opposed to leaving it entirely uncontrolled in the underground market.
Well, that's all for today's show. If you've got a moment, hop onto Twitter. Do you think some of the lessons from the U.S. experience can apply to Canada? Tweet us at Globe Now. I'm Affan Chowdhry. Thanks for watching.